Today we're going to be looking at lunar tides in the color Blood Moon. I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I'll be doing pictures and comparisons near the end of the video, so the numbers are just to help us keep track of each swatch. These are also human hair swatches, but they are not all virgin hair. The only one that is actually virgin hair is the number 4 swatch. One is green. Green and red are across from each other on the color wheel, so I wanted to see if the red would neutralize the green. 2 is gray. 3 is a natural red. 4 is black. And then from 4 to 11, we have a range that goes to platinum blonde. And the number 12 is like a tone version of number 11. So to start, I'll be taking the dye directly from the container and I'll be putting it at the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I'll do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take dye differently. So just use my video as a reference as to how this dye could possibly turn out for you. Another thing I want to reference too is that every monitor is going to look different with colors. And while I already knew that, the other day I saw my thumbnail on mobile and I'm so used to seeing everything on my computer. The colors on my mobile phone looked completely different, like way more warm toned than they did on my computer. So now I feel like I should probably be putting a disclaimer in for that as well. For the diluted section, we're going to do a 4-to-1 ratio. So that will be 4 parts of diluter to 1 part dye. If you're unsure what diluter is, the short, simple answer is that it basically lightens the color of the dye. And if you're wondering what I just use a plain white conditioner. I'm going to let these sit for maybe like 3 hours. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. So this is called Blood Moon, and I felt like when I was applying it, it did look a lot like blood. And it even kind of dried on the plastic to this kind of like brownish red color like blood often does. So I would say the name is pretty accurate. It's pretty great because it is very pigmented. I would say you can start to see a difference on number 6, but I do see a slight difference on number 5 as well for the direct dye portions. And then you can see the biggest difference on number 7 and upward. Number 1 was the green swatch. Both the direct dye and the diluted section do still look very red, but it's much more of like an orangey red. And especially on the diluted section, it kind of looks closer to a natural red. So it did neutralize it a little bit, which is why it looks closer to natural. The number 2 gray swatch to me looks a little bit more cool toned and a little bit darker. And the number 3 natural red, I think it looks close to the number 6 swatch on the direct dye portion, and then like a slightly more red version of itself on the diluted section. And I will say too, under this light, it does look a little bit more cool toned, but in my normal house lighting, it does look a lot more warm. So I have 2 comparisons today. The first one is going to be Punky color in the color Fire, I believe. They have one called Flame too, and I always get them confused which one's which. So this is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. The Fire for Punky color, that one is marketed as an orange, but to me it turned out a lot more red. But as you can see here, it's still a very orangey red. And I actually wanted to compare more so the diluted section to the direct eye section. So I feel like the direct eye section for the Punky color looks closer to the diluted section for Blood Moon. But as it's diluted, you can see it does start to pull very orange, which doesn't quite match the Blood Moon as much. But most of my reds are either too cool toned or too orangey toned. I don't have a lot of in-between colors at the moment. So I would say if you like the diluted section for Blood Moon but you want it to be slightly more warm, the Punky color Fire might be a good option for you. But do keep in mind the Punky color probably will, as it fades, look more orange. Whereas the diluted Blood Moon, I know it's not a perfect representation of how it will fade, but it still looks slightly more pinky in comparison to like the Fire, for example. And the other comparison I wanted to do was Manic Panic in the color Vampire Red. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So I remember when I applied the Vampire Red to the swatches, I did feel like that also looked kind of like blood. But now that I've done the Blood Moon definitely looks a little bit closer to blood if that's what you're trying to emulate. Vampire Red to me looks closer to a true red, whereas Blood Moon is slightly more like a muted brownish red. And you can see how much warmth the Blood Moon has now that it's compared to something slightly more pinky. But I wouldn't say Vampire Red is a pinky red either, because I do have Wrath from Arctic Fox, and that looks like it's almost straight up pink in comparison. They both have a lot of depth in the direct eye portion, so it's really just an undertone thing. Because the Blood Moon is slightly more like muted-y brown, it does pull slightly more natural looking, but by itself it doesn't necessarily look like a natural red, if that makes sense. So from here, I wanted to do the before and after clips, which I do use natural lighting for, as well as like all the pictures and stuff at the end of this video. And I'm sure, as you know, recreating the exact same environment on different days with natural lighting can be difficult. So if anything looks slightly off, that is probably why. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.